USS Missouri and USS Wisconsin were stationed just off the Kuwaiti coast, quiet but prepared for action. After years of being retired, these battleships returned to service by presidential order, now upgraded with Tomahawk cruise missiles, advanced radar, and drones. Iraqi forces anxiously watched as these World War II-era vessels appeared to signal the beginning of an amphibious invasion. At a command, Missouri opened fire with her enormous 16-inch guns, the same weapons once used at Iwo Jima. Her 2,700-pound shells screamed through the sky, striking Iraqi defenses. Soon after, Wisconsin joined the bombardment. For the Iraqi troops on the shore, the overwhelming display of power from the sister ships was staggering. Unbeknownst to them, these massive vessels were only a single element in a far larger and more intricate military strategy. While the thunderous attacks of Missouri and Wisconsin captured Iraqi attention, a more significant plan was unfolding elsewhere. By the late 1980s, though the Cold War was nearing its end, global tensions remained high. The United States had solidified its position as the dominant global power, but instability was brewing in the Middle East. Saddam Hussein, Iraq's longtime ruler, was burdened by massive debt after years of war with Iran. On August 2, 1990, he made a bold move by invading Kuwait, quickly overwhelming the small nation and seizing its oil reserves. This aggressive act granted him major influence over the global economy and triggered swift international condemnation. The United Nations imposed sanctions within days, but Saddam continued forward. As diplomacy began to reach its limits, the need for intervention became clear. Determined to prevent further hostile control over such a vital region, President George H.W. Bush organized a massive international military coalition. 34 nations joined forces, making it one of the largest alliances since World War II, with over 800,000 soldiers from countries such as the United Kingdom, France, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. In August 1990, the U.S. launched Operation Desert Shield to defend Saudi Arabia and protect its oil infrastructure. Coalition forces took up positions along the Saudi border, buying valuable time to prepare for an offensive to liberate Kuwait. As Desert Shield continued, the United Nations issued an ultimatum through Resolution 678, authorizing military force if Iraq did not withdraw from Kuwait by January 15, 1991. With time running out, coalition forces prepared for a large-scale attack. Although Iraq's armored forces were considerable, the coalition held a numerical edge. However, a direct assault could result in significant casualties. To counter this, General Norman Schwarzkopf and his team developed a three-pronged strategy designed to outsmart and outmaneuver Iraqi defenses using a combination of force and deception. The first part of the plan involved a direct infantry attack to engage Iraqi forces and prevent them from reinforcing other positions. The second prong was a wide flanking maneuver through the deserts of Kuwait and Iraq, with tanks striking from the west to cut off supply lines and trap Iraqi troops. For the other two strategies to succeed, the third and boldest part had to work flawlessly. A staged amphibious assault meant to deceive the enemy into thinking the main invasion would come from the Persian Gulf. Expecting an attack from the water, Iraqi commanders would concentrate their defenses on the coast, leaving the real invasion routes from the south and west less protected. This would allow coalition forces to advance swiftly and decisively. To make the amphibious ruse convincing, overwhelming naval firepower was necessary. The massive battleships fit the role perfectly. The USS Wisconsin, an Iowa-class battleship commissioned in April 1944, had seen action in the Pacific during World War II, offering fire support and protecting carrier strike groups. Her main weapons were 9 16-inch guns that could launch 2,700-pound shells up to 23 miles, supported by 5-inch dual-purpose guns for both air and surface threats. Her sister ship, the USS Missouri, joined the fleet in June 1944 and provided artillery during the invasions of Iwo Jima and Okinawa. She gained historical significance when she hosted Japan's formal surrender in Tokyo Bay on September 2, 1945, effectively ending World War II. During the Korean War, both ships returned to action, striking North Korean targets thanks to their impressive speed and firepower. Despite their proven capability, advancements in technology after World War II rendered the battleships less essential, leading to their decommissioning in 1955. But in the mid-1980s, with President Ronald Reagan's push for a stronger Navy under the 600-ship initiative, all 4 Iowa-class battleships were reactivated. The battleships were modernized with Tomahawk cruise missiles, Harpoon anti-ship missiles, and Phalanx CIWS for defense against incoming threats. Upgrades also included enhancements to radar, targeting systems, and electronic warfare, giving them the ability to face modern threats while preserving their classic firepower. As the January 15th deadline neared, Wisconsin and Missouri loomed off the Kuwaiti coast. Wisconsin had arrived in August, followed by Missouri in November. Saddam Hussein's military forces looked formidable, supported by Soviet and Western equipment. However, his troops were weary from a decade of war. On January 15, 1991, President Bush addressed the world, stating that Saddam had rejected all warnings and tried to turn the crisis into a dispute between Iraq and the U.S. He declared that 28 nations from 5 continents were now united in the Gulf, standing together against Hussein. A new era of warfare had officially begun. The coalition forces possessed the most advanced military technology available at the time: precision-guided missiles, stealth aircraft, and high-tech air power that dominated the battlefield and instilled fear in the enemy. Despite the modern nature of this conflict, 2 legendary battleships from a previous age played a crucial role in the success of Operation Desert Storm. Their last combat appearance had been during the Korean War, and now, 4 decades later, they returned to battle as though no time had passed. At 1:40 a.m. on January 17, 1991, USS Missouri launched her first Tomahawk missile, signaling her return to combat. Soon after, her powerful 16-inch guns fired in anger for the first time since 1953, targeting an Iraqi command and control bunker near the Saudi border. At the same time, USS Wisconsin took on a key role. As the designated strike commander for Tomahawk land attack missiles in the Persian Gulf, she coordinated the first missile strikes of the operation. In the early stages, Wisconsin launched 24 Tomahawk missiles, each aimed at critical Iraqi targets, setting the deception in motion. On January 29th, the frigate USS Kurtz guided Missouri northward through dangerous waters, using advanced sonar to avoid mines. Days later, on February 3rd, Missouri unleashed another powerful attack, firing 112 rounds at Iraqi coastal defenses, with coordination from a Marine OV-10 Bronco aircraft. Like the battleships, the aging Bronco had been underestimated, but proved its worth. As the coalition prepared for the final invasion in late February, military leaders used the return of Missouri and Wisconsin to keep global attention fixed on the possibility of a coastal assault. Headlines speculated about a beach invasion, and even major newspapers, like the New York Times, reported signs of one. On February 6th, Missouri passed fire support duties to Wisconsin, who immediately fired 11 shells across 19 miles, destroying an Iraqi artillery battery. The next day, Wisconsin utilized her RQ-2 Pioneer drone to identify targets, marking the first combat use of a drone to direct naval gunfire. Using drone guidance, Wisconsin hit a communications compound with 24 shells and later targeted ships at a nearby pier, damaging or sinking over a dozen. On February 9th, Wisconsin continued bombarding enemy positions, supporting Saudi and Qatari troops near Khafji. Missouri resumed firing in the following days, sending 60 more shells into enemy areas before setting course for Failaka Island. En route, UAVs identified a supply convoy for an Iraqi command post, and Wisconsin responded by leveling 10 buildings. The 2 ships coordinated attacks, rotating fire missions along the coast and pinning Iraqi forces in place, clearing the way for the coalition's main offensive. On the night of February 23rd, Missouri and Wisconsin opened fire on Failaka Island to simulate an amphibious invasion. Missouri began the barrage, guided by her drone, launching 2,700-pound shells that shook the Iraqi positions. When Missouri finished, Wisconsin took over, sending her drone to scout additional targets. The sound of the drone overhead was enough to prompt terrified Iraqi soldiers to wave makeshift white flags and surrender. Not to soldiers, but to the drone. Wisconsin's crew contacted their captain to ask what to do with the surrendering men. This marked the first time in history an enemy surrendered to an unmanned aerial vehicle. The next day, Wisconsin continued providing fire support, targeting entrenched Iraqi troops. After witnessing the power of the battleships, a Saudi Marine commander expressed admiration over the radio, wishing they had such a ship in their own navy. Missouri moved within 10 miles of the Kuwaiti coast on February 25th, with protection from USS Jarrett and HMS Gloucester. That night, she fired on Iraqi positions again, while 10 Marine helicopters launched a diversion near Ash Shuaibah. The feint worked, and the Iraqis, still expecting an attack from the sea, launched 2 Silkworm missiles at Missouri. An A-6 intruder spotted the launches and reported them. One missile was confused by chaff and fell harmlessly into the water. The other locked onto Missouri. As the missile approached, a chilling warning echoed through Missouri. Missile inbound. Brace for shock. HMS Gloucester responded by launching 2 Sea Dart missiles, intercepting and destroying the incoming threat. This was the first successful missile-on-missile interception in naval combat. Coalition aircraft quickly located the launch site, and a strike team destroyed the Silkworm batteries with cluster bombs. Later that day, another scare unfolded. Missouri continued her bombardment, now escorted by multiple ships, when HMS Exeter noticed smoke rising from an oil well. A new missile launch seemed imminent. Missouri deployed chaff again, but this time, USS Jarrett's phalanx defense system mistakenly identified the chaff as a threat and opened fire, hitting Missouri. Though damage was minor and no one was seriously injured, the crew went on high alert, fearing a chemical attack. After a tense period, the all clear was given, and the crew was told to relax their gas masks. The threat had passed. A crew member, Bill Genereur, recalled this moment from deep within Missouri, in the room that controlled the battleship's main guns. Surrounded by thick armor and knowing he was in one of the ship's most vital areas, he reflected on the helpless feeling of awaiting impact, uncertain whether the next moment would be his last. As coalition ground forces launched their offensive on February 25th, the Navy maintained pressure along the coast, preventing any Iraqi redeployment. On February 26th, deep in the desert, Captain H.R. McMaster led his unit in the Battle of 73 Easting. With remarkable precision, American tanks and armored vehicles destroyed 44 Iraqi targets without suffering a single loss, solidifying the operation's reputation as the 100-Hour War. That same day, Missouri began missions to enforce the ceasefire terms. On February 28th, with Saddam Hussein's forces collapsing and the scale of destruction evident, a ceasefire was accepted, and President Bush declared an end to hostilities. Missouri and Wisconsin had together fired over 1 million pounds of ordnance. Wisconsin closed the war with the final naval gunfire support mission, making her the last battleship to fire in combat. Coalition losses totaled around 300 troops, far fewer than expected, thanks in part to the success of the diversionary tactics that kept Iraqi forces pinned along the coast. Iraqi losses were far greater, with around 10,000 troops killed and much of their armored capability destroyed. During their deployment, USS Wisconsin logged 348 UAV hours, conducted 661 safe helicopter landings, traveled 46,000 nautical miles, and fired 319 rounds from her main guns, 881 from secondary guns, and 5,200 from her phalanx systems, along with 24 Tomahawk missiles. USS Missouri cleared 15 mines, launched 28 Tomahawk missiles, and fired 759 rounds from her main guns. Though they proved themselves once again in Desert Storm, the changing global landscape and the collapse of the Soviet Union led to all battleships being retired shortly after. Missouri and Wisconsin, having served in 3 wars over 5 decades, were honored for their service and are now preserved as museum ships, enduring symbols of power and legacy.